Hi, I'm Claire Horner of ATL Shrink. I'm a psychotherapist in Atlanta, Georgia, specializing in relationships and trauma.
John Kabashinsky, a spiritual teacher and healer. And today we're going to talk about forgiveness in a short amount of time. How much time we got, Claire?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, we're going to hit some high points. And, something that I always like to say, this is kind of my premise when we're talking about anything around personal awareness work and that kind of thing, is that you do not have to do this work. It is a choice. And I think everything that we go into should be a choice. And, sometimes we need to take the time to learn about something like a topic like forgiveness. We need to explore how we think and feel about it. But let's take that time and make that choice, whether we're going to or we're not going to, rather than just ignore it and hope it works itself out.
Yeah, in spirituality, free will is one of the biggies, and so we always have a choice, and we have a choice to suffer too, and so we have to take responsibility that sometimes our suffering is part of our choices, and so that's where forgiveness can be a really wonderful thing, is that it can end a lot of suffering if we kind of understand it. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I want to clarify like just a couple things about forgiveness. I'm gonna talk about it more from a psychological space. John's gonna talk about it more from a spiritual space, but neither of us are talking about it from a religious space. So I want to clarify that, because especially in the South, you say forgiveness and people go to the church like pretty quickly.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I want to make that clear, because not everybody knows us.
Right, right.
And yeah. So, today we want to talk about why to bother? Why bother forgiving?
Yeah.
And what if I don't? And so you've kind of already started that. So what are some of your key points?
Well, I mean, why bother? Well, let's start with what the benefits are. So I've listed three benefits. So change meaning, works on many levels, and overall healing. So what does that mean? From a spiritual point of view, when you change the meaning, you change how you see and experience something. So you can see the same person who forgave you, when you go through forgiveness, you can see the same person without feeling all that anxiety and stress and wanting to choke them, that it's just kind of neutral. Well, that's when you know you've achieved forgiveness spiritually, is when you're at least at a neutral place. But spirituality is about love, and forgiveness is the expression of unconditional love, and therefore it's actually trying to love someone who's acted pretty unlovable. And when you do that, you know love on a deeper level. And by doing that, you raise your awareness and you see the world more in a loving awareness. That's what I mean by changing meaning. In terms of working on many levels, well, you'll probably be able to go in this more than me, but it affects you emotionally, it affects you physically, it affects you spiritually. It has,
Relationship.
well, yeah, your relationships, and we usually spend our time completely unaware of that. So you don't realize that benefit of how many levels it works on until after the forgiveness has started, at least, and you can
Mm-hmm.
recognize it. But that's the meaning part. The awareness part changes. So, and then the other one, the final thing is the overall healing effect. So stress is the result. We all know when we're like angry at somebody and can't forgive them, we're like, that's stressful. But we're experiencing that stress all the time. And it's happening on ways that we don't even understand, because abstract things can even create triggers that allow us to feel that stress. Or we just start feeling stress all the time, and we don't realize that it's this thing we haven't forgiven that's kind of the cornerstone of that. And that stress relates in stress related diseases. And the effects of stress on our work, on our concentration, on our relationships, our whole quality of life goes down. When we forgive, the whole quality of life goes up. And sometimes we don't know that needs to happen.
And when we talk about forgiveness, we definitely have to acknowledge that there's levels, right? There's the basic things, the day-to-day things that happen. Then there's, the harder things that are a little bit tougher. Then there's abuse and neglect and things that would have legal ramifications. And so a couple of the things that I want to highlight is, and we've got about 5 minutes left. So one of the things I want to highlight is that, to me, forgiveness is about self-preservation. I want to preserve my energy. I want to preserve the real estate in my head. I want to preserve the beliefs about the world, because beliefs, I say beliefs get born when we go through certain things. And so we want to take real care. I want to take real care in what beliefs are impacting how I see the world. You know, if we have a parent that treats us in a certain way over many years, whether they're apologizing or not, that affects us. And we might develop a belief that, you know, all dads do these things or all moms do these things. And we may not even know until we do this work that that belief was born, but we're acting it every day in some sort of way. And
Yeah.
so that self-preservation is really important to me. We'll get into it another day, but self-preservation to me means not forgiving and forgetting, but forgiving and remembering. And that means a lot of things, so I won't go into that. But I feel like there's a place for remembering what's happened. Use it as data. And because people need to do that with us as well. We're going to hurt people as well. That's just a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, in spirituality, you get what you give. So if and we all need to be forgiven, but you know, usually we won't get it energetically until we give it first. And so we live not only with the burdens of what someone did to us, but the burdens of what we've done to others. And so that's kind of the nature of unconditional love. But it creates a kind of an awareness that becomes a prison cell. So Lewis Smedes, an author, said, essentially, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner is you. So when we're forgiving, we're not, as you were saying, letting someone off the hook. We're taking the hooks out of us. You know, those hooks that are like tentacles dragging all of this baggage with us everywhere we go. You can imagine like hooks all around us. And we're just struggling to move through life with these hooks that are attached to these emotions and these kind of viewpoints on limiting thoughts on how the world works, because we see it in such a way, we've constructed a reality for ourselves. And when we forgive, we start pulling those hooks out. So, you know, as you pointed out, it's not about saying, oh, get over it. No. In fact, I totally agree with you. You should not only not get over it, but getting over it does mean remembering it, you know, because if you can't love yourself to acknowledge your own wounding, then there's a problem with the whole equation to begin with.
Right.
In terms spiritually, in terms of love.
Right.
And that's the big thing here is forgiveness is in the toolkit of love, where it transforms our beliefs from fear, because that core wound happened. And we see world through a lens of fear. And we can transform it through forgiveness back into love, to create love where it didn't exist before. And that spiritually is a very special thing. And it changes everything. It changes how you see the world, how you experience it, how you relate to others. It changes everything. But most of us are those prisoners who don't realize that. And
that's
go ahead.
That's why I think of spirituality as our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our own thoughts, our feelings, and that connection that's happening within us. It's certainly bigger than that in terms of how we connect to the bigger world and how we connect to nature, how we connect to, you know, over big concepts, right? And like gravity even. And so, you know, to me, to work on this forgiveness, to not forgive, again, back to what if I don't, to not forgive is to carry it around and to have real estate that's being taken up in ourselves. You know, there's a mansion, you know, in my back, so to speak. You know, they say the monkey on your back. It's like having a mansion that's just sitting there vacant, that you're paying money to, you're maintaining it, but nobody's there and there's no benefit to it. It just holds the space. So to me, the difference would be to decide what actions need to take place. What are the natural consequences that need to happen in the relationship with that person? Or then in a relationship with your own feelings about that thing. That person may not be here anymore in some kind of way, right? I mean, there's some hurts that happen that we don't have access to the person. And so exploring that can be really helpful. So as we come to kind of wrapping up, we could talk about this for a very long time. But we have stress related disorders, physical things that happen. When we don't do things like address our forgiveness, our nervous systems are jacked up and kind of stay that way. And when a new hurt comes along that's similar to an old one, we re-feel it all over again if we haven't addressed it. And I personally feel like, forgiveness is a skill that we need to develop for ourselves, so that I know what my process is for when I need to forgive. When I need to forgive, and another conversation we had, do I need to forgive the UPS driver who left my package in the rain? Or do I need to forgive a chronic abusive parent? And so all those levels of things, I need to develop for myself what my process is.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of people who are chronically ill, and they come to this idea of forgiveness as a part of their healing, and release, back to love, and on some level, how much of their life was wasted in dealing with this. So what I would leave people with is to say, think about it now. Don't wait till you have a chronic disease, or the relationships that you've been going through are chronically in disrepair. Think about where you might need to look into forgiveness now, and reach out for some help, because sometimes the biggest problem is we don't see it,
Mm-hmm.
and someone can help point that out for us.
Well, we didn't quite manage 10 minutes, but we're really close.
Okay.
So I'm Claire Horner, ATL Shrink.
I'm John Kavashinsky, spiritual teacher and healer.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to talking about this topic some more.
Yes, thank you.